Imagine building a cube so large that 20 Empire State Buildings could fit inside it. Now imagine filling that cube with a virtual reality holodome. Well, that's exactly what Saudi Arabia proposed at the start of 2023. And honestly, most people just kind of rolled their eyes. Surely this project was impossible. Surely it was just a stunt, right? Well, towards the end of 2024, to everyone's surprise, construction actually got underway. And to this day, the developers could not be more convinced of the completion of this record-breaking building. So let's take a second look at this project and see just how far it's come since we last spoke about it. The cube is meant to be the main attraction of a brand new downtown in the Saudi capital, Riyadh. The downtown is called New Murabba, while the cube is called the Mukab. In case you were wondering, that's literally just the Arabic word for cube, so makes sense. According to those plans from 2023, the Mukab would be 400 meters tall from top to bottom, which means that it would technically count as a super tall skyscraper. But unlike normal skyscrapers, it would also be 400 meters wide. As we already mentioned, you could fit 20 Empire State Buildings inside the Mukab and still have some room to spare. This would actually make it the largest building in the world, not the tallest building. We're talking volume here. The Mukab would smash the current record, which is held by the Boeing Everett factory in Washington. The Mukab would be such a massive structure that it would actually be 5 times larger than the current record holder. And the size isn't even the most amazing part of this project. Apparently, setting foot inside would be like entering another world. A colossal dome would be placed in the cube and covered by a sea of holograms. These holograms would make the Mukab's visitors feel like they're at the bottom of the ocean, or on the surface of Mars, or in a magical fantasy realm. At the center of all of this would be a spiral tower full of restaurants, cinemas, and hotels. It would be larger than the Eiffel Tower, and the biggest indoor structure ever built. There would also be towers at the corners of the cube, packed with plenty more rooms and facilities. A network of basements would provide 350,000 square meters of extra space. Not to mention the top of the structure, which would be turned into a giant garden. In total, the entire megastructure would be able to accommodate 250,000 people. Michael Dyke, the CEO of the project, summed it all up pretty well. It's just unbelievable. He's also called it the most complex engineering thing ever undertaken. The official plan has always been to finish it by 2030. It's part of Vision 2030, a wider plan to shift Saudi Arabia's economy away from oil and towards tourism and technology instead. It was also recently announced that Saudi Arabia would be hosting a World Expo in 2030. This World Expo, or World Fair, would run for months and see millions of people visit Riyadh. Wouldn't it be great if the Mukab project was finished and ready to greet them? Well, there's a problem though. Or rather, a couple of problems. Since the Mukab was announced, people have been wondering if this structure is even technically possible. As we said, their CEO, Michael Dyke, called it the most complex engineering project ever. But maybe it's too complicated. Could any of this even actually be done? Well, the second problem here is money. Shocking, right? Even if the project is technically feasible, funding it is another matter entirely. In total, the new Murabba project is expected to cost around $50 billion. But in 2023, when the project was announced, Dr. Andreas Krieg, an expert in Middle Eastern studies at King's College London, said the finances of all of this are not entirely secured. It's a very nice British way of putting that. This was later confirmed by Knight Frank, a property company who found that the project had only raised about $3.6 billion, less than 10% of the total cost. And all of that had come from the Saudi Public Investment Fund. It seemed the project wasn't just relying on local funding, meaning a big chunk of the missing capital had to come from foreign investors. With all of this uncertainty around both technical requirements and project funding, a lot of people in 2023 were pretty dismissive of the project. Yeah, sure, a cool idea with lots of stunning renderings, but something that would actually be built one day didn't feel very likely. But then came a bit of a twist. Before we take a closer look at these satellite images, we want to take a quick moment to thank Exter for sponsoring this video. Exter creates these sleek and modern smart wallets that blend style with innovation. They come in a variety of designs and colors, like this bergamot brown or Bologna black. We actually worked with Exter back in 2023, and we've been using their wallets for over a year now. Honestly, we love how practical and durable they are. And here's the best part. Easy access cards. Just kidding, that's great, but you also never have to worry about data thieves because all extra wallets come with built-in RFID protection. They've also upgraded their popular card holder, made from recycled aluminum with a modern, rounded design. Plus, with their lifetime warranty, you know that you're investing in something that lasts. On top of that, Extra's products are customizable with awesome accessories like the Finder card, which lets you track your wallet straight from your phone if you're prone to losing it. If you're ready to upgrade your everyday carry, click the link in the description below and get up to 40% off during Extra's anniversary sale. And don't forget to use our code MEGABuilds at checkout. And now, let's continue with the construction of the cube. You're looking at the spot in the city of Riyadh where the Murabba is meant to be built. This satellite image was actually taken in February 2023, about a week after the project was first announced. Here's the same spot a few months later. Okay, nothing's really changed. But here it is at the end of September 2024. I don't know about you, but to me, that definitely looks like the foundations for a giant cube. We even got our rulers out, and it looks like the sides of this excavation are exactly 400 meters long. The company behind the new Murabba project officially confirmed it in October when they put out this official press release. To quote them, excavation at the iconic Murabba has reached 86% completion. Apparently, 10 million cubic meters of earth have been excavated so far. To put that into perspective, if you took all that earth, you'd have enough to fill about a sixth of the cube itself. That work was done by 900 people plus 250 excavators. You can actually see those excavators in another satellite image. Now, I'm not going to count them because my math stinks, but that sure looks like a couple hundred machines to me. The release also mentions a temporary bridge that'll be built over the King Khalid Road. Let's be clear here. With a project like this one, digging the foundations and building the bridge is the easy part. But it's definitely a start, and as the press release goes on to say, all this work is meant to demonstrate the company's strong commitment to the project. Interestingly, the press release also talks a lot about the project's health and safety. It says that 3 million safe work hours have been logged so far, that progress and safety go hand in hand, and there's even a quote from Michael Dyke about prioritizing the well-being of our workforce. Okay, sure, maybe they're overcompensating for the accusations of human rights violations on other projects. At this point, we can't really confirm or deny whether the Murabba project is treating its workers well or not, but that is certainly what the company is claiming at the very least. This press release doesn't give us an update on the project's date of completion, but luckily, in the same month, October 2024, Dyke gave an interview in Dubai. We have 2,283 days until the 31st of December 2030, and that will be the point by which the core downtown is online. The Murabba sits at the heart of that and will be fully functioning. In other words, Dyke still thinks the project will be ready for Expo 2030. Maybe everyone was wrong to doubt the cube. Maybe it's coming after all. But wait a minute. There's something we need to talk about here. Earlier, we saw how the Murabba project was searching for foreign investors. The Saudi Public Investment Fund had only given them $3.6 billion, less than 10% of the project's total cost. In that recent interview, Dyke was asked about this, and apparently he declined to comment. So, has the project managed to raise that money? Well, the actual answer is probably not. In a totally different interview, but again in October of 2024, Dyke put out a call for investment. We have a finite level of capital, so that means we must attract partners. In other words, they're definitely still looking for money. And that kind of makes you wonder, why is he so confident that the cube will be finished when they're still looking for ways to fund it? Well, we have a theory, but before we tell you what it is, if you're enjoying this video and you want to see similar content in the future, don't forget to subscribe to MegaBuilds. Anyways, back to the cube. As we've seen, Michael Dyke has been giving us some very mixed messages, shall we say? On the one hand, he's telling everyone who will listen that the project is on course for completion, but at the same time, he's searching for investment. So what's actually going on here? Well, how about this for a theory? Maybe Dyke said the project is on course to be finished in 2030, not because he thinks that that will actually happen, but because he knows that this kind of confidence is needed to convince other companies to invest. At the end of the day, that's just how the game is played. No one would pump their money into a project that's still surrounded by so much uncertainty. They're much more likely to invest in something that's on course for success. They literally announced that construction had started in the exact same month that Dike put out that call for investors. In other words, they're trying everything they can to convince people that this project is legitimate. And while that's a fairly normal tactic, it doesn't reveal much about whether it'll actually be done by 2030. When it comes to Saudi megaprojects, this is actually a pretty familiar story. 2 years ago, we posted a video a lot like this one when construction first started on the line. They excavated a massive piece of land 170 kilometers long, and at the same time, officials were traveling the world trying to drum up investment. Well, apparently, they haven't had much luck, and there are rumors now that the line will be reduced to roughly 2% of the planned original length. But honestly, we don't think that money is the determining factor when it comes to whether the Mukab gets completed by 2030. There are still some major technological hurdles that the project needs to overcome. And with less than 6 years on the clock, time is ticking. In particular, that giant holographic dome. Dike has admitted the technology today exists, but not at the scale that we're going to be deploying it. There are things like the hologram fans, but we're not sure if that technology actually does exist in the style of those renders shared in 2023. But okay, instead of giant holograms, maybe the dome could use a wraparound LED screen like the one in the Las Vegas Sphere. But even then, it would be pretty hard to pull that off. At 15,000 square meters, the screen in the Sphere is the largest one in the world. It's roughly the size of 3 football pitches. But the screen in the Mukab would need to be at least 20 times as large. Maybe that's exactly what Dike was talking about when he said that the technology exists, but not at the scale they need. Having said that though, everything you read about the planned Mukab talks about holograms, not LED screens. So, yeah. Either way, the technology really isn't there yet, and it seems like the project hasn't raised enough money yet. So what does this whole situation mean for the Cube? Well, while researching all of this, we came across, you guessed it, yet another interview with Dike. This one was in November of 2024, about a month after all the others. In this interview, he spoke about Phase 1 of the project, which is an interesting phrase that he hasn't used anywhere else. More specifically, he said, Phase 1 will be completed by 2030, but there will still be room to add up. So maybe this is our biggest clue yet about the future of the Mukab. Maybe a Phase 1 version of the project will be built by 2030, just in time for that World Expo we mentioned, but with Phase 2 not completed until later. For example, maybe they'll build the exterior of the cube, but not the holographic dome on the inside. That would still be a stunning landmark. At the end of 2030, I shall take great pleasure watching the sun go down, standing on the roof of the Mukab, feeling pretty good about what's under our feet. Remember the Boeing Everett factory, the current record holder for the largest building in the world? Well, that was built in stages too. In 1967, it was constructed at less than half of its current size. Then in 1979, the project was expanded, and again in 1990. In other words, you don't always need to build a project in one go. In 2034, Saudi Arabia will actually host the FIFA World Cup, and one of the new stadiums will be constructed in New Murabba. So maybe that's another target to aim for? Phase 1 completed for Expo 2030, and Phase 2 completed for the 2034 World Cup. Dike has also said technologies develop so rapidly every day, we need to leave room for our future generation. Just because something doesn't look possible now doesn't mean that it won't be possible eventually. But what do you think will happen to the Cube? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. As always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.